Biodiversity has many definitions, and really depends on how in-depth you want. It has been described as the composition, structure, and function of life, considered from the genetic to landscape levels of organization. If a more condensed definition is sought, biodiversity has been defined as the variety of life and its processes. There are a few other topics you may have heard of relating to biodiversity. These include species diversity, which consists of species richness and evenness, often key components when considering biodiversity. The largest concern when considering biodiversity is the fact that it is being lost, either due to human effects or natural occurrences. In no particular order of importance, biodiversity has been linked to drive speciation, or the creation of new species. Species have important functional, economic, and aesthetic values. These functions include herbivory, nutrient cycling, decomposition, pollination, evapotranspiration, and seed dispersal. The Ecological Society of America concludes that a loss of biodiversity and species richness can lead to declines in overall levels of ecosystem functioning. The ESA also states that ecosystem productivity increases with species richness. Biodiversity is also important because different species of biota are sources of food, medicine, and industry for humankind to depend on. Species within ecosystems are interdependent, especially when considering food webs and the biotic community's contributions as part of the food webs. At the population level, biodiversity is important because different populations of species may contain unique genetic diversity, and they may also contain local adaptations not found elsewhere. At the individual species level, the biodiversity is significant because a species may be a keystone species, an indicator species, an umbrella species, or an economically important species, including tourism.
I think diversity is a very, very important thing, and it's usually one of those keystones that we build on with all of our education and programming and things. The main thing is you use diversity a lot as an indicator of health. The more diverse you have an ecosystem, the healthier that ecosystem tends to be. So having that diversity really is a sign that you have something good going on.
Biodiversity can be lost on several different levels of organization, including genetics, individual species, populations, and ecosystems. Let's focus on the loss of biodiversity at the genetic level, as it is the building blocks of all life. Genetic diversity is often lost most easily in small populations. First, the principle known as the founder effect states that founders of a new population carry only a random subset of the genetic diversity found in the larger parent population. By only having a portion of the genetic material available, the diversity of this new population is diminished. A demographic bottleneck can also explain how diversity is lost at the genetic level. This occurs as the population undergoes a significant reduction in size due to natural or human causes. The effect is similar to the founder effect, where only a limited amount of genetic material is left for the remaining individuals. Yet another cause of diversity loss is completely due to chance. Genetic drift is the random changes in gene frequency within a small population. The unique alleles and adaptations of biodiversity importance, as stated previously, are lost simply by random chance and cannot be recovered. The first step to conserving, protecting, and managing for biodiversity is learning all there is to learn. Knowledge is power, as they say. The more you know about a species, population, or ecosystem, including how it functions, its components, and the interdependence, the better able you are to manage the parts that comprise the whole. Knowledge also allows you to spread the facts to other people. This country's attempt at conserving biodiversity can be seen in the established natural parks and wilderness areas. After all, the best way to allow ecosystems to function properly is to let nature run its course and leave it in its natural state. Many countries throughout the world are also finding it beneficial to create management plans and programs to boost and sustain levels of biodiversity. Another way to protect biodiversity is to outright make it into law. There are copious amounts of legislature which enact laws to protect biodiversity. From here we will take an in-depth look at such a piece of legislation and a biodiversity success story, the Endangered Species Act through the American bald eagle. The Endangered Species Act was created by the Department of Interior through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service starting in 1973. Congress found that various species of fish, wildlife, and plants in the U.S. had become extinct or were on the verge of extinction. They also found that these species were of value and needed to be protected, and thus was born the ESA. Within the Act, it states that the purpose is to provide a means whereby the ecosystems upon which endangered species depend may be conserved. Within the Act, and perhaps one of the most important sections to the average person, is the prohibited acts. They are numerous and may require additional reading into the definitions section, as even one term can prohibit several actions. The American Eagle Foundation estimates that bald eagle numbers in what would become the United States may once have been as high as 500,000 individuals. The decline of the population started with the colonization by Europeans with hunting, pollution, especially the pesticide DDT, and habitat destruction through the 19th and 20th centuries. Due to these negative consequences on the population, then sitting at only 82 pairs, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources placed the bald eagle on the endangered species list in 1972. First, the negative impacts on the bald eagle population needed to be stopped. In order to do this, the federal and state governments placed the bald eagle on the endangered and threatened species list, which required it to be protected by all laws stated within the Endangered Species Act. Currently, the bald eagle is protected by the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources created the Bald Eagle Recovery Plan in order to increase the self-sustaining population of bald eagles. The plan is divided into two parts: Recovery Action Plan and Background Information. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service published the National Bald Eagle Management Guidelines in 2007 in order to help people minimize impacts to bald eagles and avoid violations of the law, especially against disturbances. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Bureau of Endangered Resources created the Wisconsin Endangered Resources Report, including information on bald eagle and osprey populations, status, nesting biology, and management in Wisconsin. It records that the main threat to eagles in Wisconsin is human population increase on nesting grounds, particularly along lakes and rivers, which are prime feeding grounds. It promotes the use of territory management plans to protect the nesting territories from human disturbances. Management and conservation of biodiversity can occur on the local level as well as personal level. The City of Kaukauna has been monitoring a pair of bald eagles within its limits since 1988. A report written in 2007 by Ron Vandervelden includes a detailed history of the bald eagle within Kaukauna. Within the city's open space and recreation plan, a management plan resides describing the history, types of disturbances, and management recommendations for the bald eagles. The management recommendations include researching to identify contaminants and their sources, ensure adequate access to foraging areas by the eagles, and to limit and discourage all human activity around foraging areas during times of feeding. Limiting human activity and disturbance can be quite difficult, but can be accomplished through public education and by increasing vegetation in order to limit the eagle's visibility of humans. Within the city of Kaukauna resides an organization known as the Thousand Islands Environmental Center. At the center, conservation practices and preservation of natural resources are taught to students and citizens. The Thousand Islands Conservancy Zone now encompasses 350 acres, many of which are inhabited by the pair of nesting bald eagles in Kaukauna. Because of the Thousand Islands' focus on conservation and preservation, they have been managing and monitoring the bald eagle population within Kaukauna and the surrounding fox cities. The bald eagle was removed from the Wisconsin Threatened and Endangered Species List in 1997 and then taken off the federal list 10 years later, but that doesn't mean that all management can be halted. In order to ensure the continuation of management and success of the bald eagles at the federal level, the Department of the Interior's Fish and Wildlife Service created a post-delisting monitoring plan. Because of the cooperative collaboration between government agencies, organizations, and the public, the bald eagle is a prime example of a success story. With its recovery, biodiversity was also revived and given hope to the continuation of bald eagle populations to come. Where would the United States be without its national symbol? An understanding of biodiversity can relinquish the need to ask these types of questions in the first place.
I love seeing them flying around. Makes my day every time I come to work and I get to see the eagles.